Here's Joe from Georgia. So folks, we're getting ready to see those shelves start to become empty here real soon. The West Coast ports, Los Angeles and Long Beach, which is actually one humongous port there, complex. And no ships are bound from China to the West Coast ports. None. A week ago, there were 41. Now there's 0. And in Long Beach, their operators of that complex are saying that they haven't seen this happen since the COVID pandemic. So now it begins with the dock workers losing their jobs, the people on the ships losing their jobs, and then the truck drivers who transport those goods across the United States. The ones that show up at your grocery stores, your department stores, all of those, they're not going to get there as quick as they used to because the supply chain has been totally interrupted. So you're going to start seeing those shelves empty out in stores, and it's going to be pretty drastic when it does happen because the excess that U.S. companies bought before the tariffs went into effect, they're into those shipments now. So folks, this trade war that we're in is now going to affect everyone. And the biggest problem with those shortages on the shelves, they're not going to have a shortage of charging you more money for it. Inflation is getting ready to soar. Unemployment is getting ready to go up. Folks, we're not doing well with this negotiations and trade wars with every country on the planet. It's not working out well for us.
So Trump is about to accept a $400 million gift from the royal family of Qatar in the form of a Boeing 747 Jumbo 8 plane. Even if this was just going to be used as a temporary upgrade for Air Force One until Boeing completes the new ones, it would still be a bribe. But what gets worse is that right before Trump leaves office, if he actually does, in 2027, this is going to be signed over to the Trump Library Foundation for Trump's personal use, which means he is going to get to keep this $400 million aircraft as a gift from a foreign head of state. The current minimal value for the annulments clause is $480. So Trump is going to tack 6 extra zeros onto that. And normally what you would have to do in this situation is pay the government back the value of that item. So in Trump's mind, somehow donating the plane to his own foundation counts as paying the government back for this bribe. I cannot wait to see what kind of quid pro quo Qatar gets through this. So we're going to have to keep an eye out on everything that Qatar does with the United States going forward. I mean, this couldn't have anything to do with the $5.5 billion beachside golf resort that the Trump organization is building in Qatar, right?
Here are some phrases that I will never take seriously from a Republican again. I'm a Christian. So what part of Jesus' teachings do you think Trump actually follows? Also, idolatry is a sin. We support economic growth. No, you support redistributing the wealth from the bottom and middle to the very top. We love the United States of America. No, you don't. You love one man, and that's Donald Trump. Go ahead and read up on the 5th and 14th Amendments again, because due process is for everybody in the United States. We care about women. I think you forgot to add when you can control them, their lives, and their bodies. When you can't do that, then you just cry about the male loneliness epidemic. We support education. I don't think I even have to explain that.
He's an idiot. I'm sorry. I am not a Trumper. Never will be. I can't stand the guy. It's nothing in politics or anything. He's just a piece of garbage.
And so is it not his lack of capability, but his character?
Oh, yeah, he's lack of capability. He's an idiot. He's an idiot. I'm sorry. You know, I know you're into Trump, but he's an idiot.
Okay. So what? I mean,
if you actually ask him, just the other day, they asked him about his thing of Harvard, why he's going after Harvard, and the guy starts going off on a rant about Harlem and how all the blacks love him. That's intelligent. The guy's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So obviously he can't run for a third term, although there's like kind of a joke in the Republican Party. But in the process, the next 4 years, what kind of advice could you give Republicans to either keep them accountable or to improve the state of America?
Yeah, exactly. Do your job, serve the people, and get this guy out. I don't, personally me, I'm an independent. So I don't give a damn if it's a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. I don't care if it's black, white, Christian, Muslim, whatever. I don't care who it is. As long as they're in there and they're doing the job for the people.
Here's everything that you need to know about the arrest at the New Jersey Immigration Detention Center, and you're going to want to take a seat because you're going to want to hear this. But before I get into that, if you don't know by now, I'm CFH, Unfiltered Combat Veteran and former sniper, and I am a patriot. The mayor of Newark, New Jersey, Ross Baraka, was just arrested at an ICE detention center in his own city. Why? Because he joined a group of elected members of Congress who were trying to do oversight of a facility that detains human beings. But here's the catch. Members of Congress have the legal authority and the right to conduct unannounced inspections of federal facilities, especially those holding people. You know what I mean? But mayors do not. Now those members of Congress who were doing their job are being threatened with arrest. And remember, they do have the authority and the legal right to conduct unannounced inspections of federal facilities in their state. So let's talk about the facility that they were trying to inspect. This ICE detention center is owned by Geo Group, a multi-billion-dollar private prison company, a company whose stock price skyrocketed the moment the analysts predicted Donald Trump was going to win the presidential election. That's interesting. And that ICE detention center that's owned by Geo Group, guess what? They do not have any permits. They are operating illegally, hence the oversight inspection. The people's elected representatives are being threatened with arrest for performing their duty and obligation in which they are authorized to do so on a facility that is operating illegally without permits that detain human beings. People keep saying that it's not about immigration. Immigration is just the wedge that is opening the pathway for tyranny.
News broke today that Republicans are going to try to pull off a magic trick. I'm referring, of course, to the news that Trump is said to be planning to accept a luxury 747 from Qatar in order to use as the new Air Force One. While that does raise a hefty amount of ethical questions, that's not the magic trick I'm talking about. The magic trick I'm referring to is that the Republicans who have been telling us, the American taxpayers, for months that Doggy is finding all this waste, fraud, and abuse and the government spends too much money and we need to reduce the size of the federal workforce, they're about to try to convince us now that it would be a really great idea if you and I and every other American taxpayer would fund a brand new toy for Donald Trump to use after he leaves office. But Joe, what do you mean the 747 is going to be a donation according to reporting? How is it going to cost American taxpayers anything? Well, in order to make any plane safe and functional to be used as Air Force One for the President of the United States, that's going to require an immense retrofit. Communications upgrades, the ability to refuel mid-air, countermeasures to defend against attacks, and being able to withstand nuclear fallout due to a nuclear attack. None of these things come standard from Boeing. To retrofit a 747 is going to cost an immense amount of money, all of which will be at our expense. And after Trump leaves office, we're getting conflicting reports about what happens next with the plane. A couple of sources says that it will be donated to the Trump Library. But that same source, the New York Times, is also reporting that Mr. Trump's own private plane, known as Trump Force One, is an older 757 jet that first flew in the early 1990s and was then used by the Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. Trump bought it in 2011, and the Qatari jet, if Mr. Trump continued flying it after leaving office, would give him a substantially newer plane for his own use. We all know Trump's personality. We all know his shallowness, his materialism. Do you think there is any chance on God's green earth that he doesn't use that 747 any chance he gets after he leaves office? Call me old-fashioned, call me a socialist, but I'd rather have my tax dollars go to ensure that kids don't go hungry at school rather than making sure that Donald Trump has a brand new shiny toy to go to his golf course in. So here's my message to Republicans. If you accept the 747 as a gift and you retrofit it to make it safe to carry the President of the United States, that's no longer your plane. That's mine. And Donald Trump can't have it.
So the crypt walker, Donald Trump, because he's about to go into a crypt, after all of this hullabaloo, China ain't moving an inch. They're in Switzerland. They had very cordial talks with the Swiss people and the Swiss government. They met with the US delegation for 15 minutes and left. You don't understand what hardball is. China is playing hardball. After that hillbilly with the eyeliner talking about peasants. The peasants own trillions of dollars of our debt. Yeah. No ships leaving China to come to the US. Donald Trump and all of his assholes like Lutnick saying, well, we end with 10% tariffs. That's a 10% tax on the American people. There is no business that is going to absorb any 10% that they have to pay in tariffs. And not only that, the US government cannot mandate that any business absorb this 10% tax. But the Maga, you guys thought that you're going to rule the world. The world is ruling you.
For the lady who told me that I was wrong about the Afrikaners, well, they'll be here on Monday. I did a video about 2 or 3 months ago talking about them. And black people, this is our test. Because the Afrikaners are being rehomed for us. Right? They're used to black people being a certain kind of way. Right? Especially black Africans. They are not kind to us, guys. They're not going to be kind to your children. But it's nothing that we have not experienced here in America. Right? So when they come and they try to bait you, just smile and keep it moving. Like our children are depending on us to get this right. They're depending on us to be the adults here. They're depending on us not to take the bait. And also, this is part of the plan for him to get us out in the streets. Because they're going to do something to one of us. And we are going to be pissed. And we're going to want to protest. And we cannot. This is a season where we're going to have to depend on Palm Colored Nation to handle this. Because we are not going to be able to. Because the minute we step out there in a mass numbers, remember, he's trying to suspend habeas corpus, right? Well, let me tell you, he can declare an insurrection in America and suspend habeas corpus and get Congress to do it. And then we will be stuck. So now is the time that we have to come together and we have to use our heads, man. These Afrikaners coming over here are our bait. Don't take the bait.
If you had told me a few short years ago, I wouldn't believe a single word coming out of the White House until it was confirmed by any single representative of the Chinese government, I would have had questions and concerns. Like, even the last time Trump was presidente, I would have had questions had you said something like that. But today, Captain Stifferoony, Scotty B, on the steps in front of some building in Geneva was like, we've been talking to the vice premier of China and we've made a trade deal and it's going to be glorious. I'm still not sure about things like grocery stores and how the poor people operate. I think food just appears on shelves for free, but whatever. We've made a trade deal with China. The White House has even messaged out that like a trade deal has been hit. It's 3:40 p.m. here. It means it's 3:40 a.m. in China. Nobody's up and making decisions at this moment. It is Sunday. The market's open on Monday. I have a strategic feeling China's not going to say anything until Monday after trading starts, and I have a sneaking suspicion they are not going to agree with the statement like we have a trade deal. It just... Usually when you guys come to an agreement, there's a public photo op with representatives from both sides. Scotty B standing alone on the front steps of some random building on a Sunday afternoon. It doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem right. And the last time Trump lied and was like, yeah, I talk to China every day, China said, bitch, please, take our name out your mouth, and they took away yet another thing that we need. I am legit concerned that China is going to spank us yet again for lying or overemphasizing our version of the truth. I am seriously waiting around for the Chinese government to wake up and give us their version of what happened. But also, they sent their vice premier. Like, I mean, okay, Winnie the Pooh's not showing up to trade anything, but like, the vice premier, and just the vice premier, not like a whole contingent of people. Is it weird that I'm rooting for China? Financially, it's gonna screw me, but is it weird that I'm rooting for China, but also waiting for China to be like, okay, and what really happened was... This is like when you were in grade school, and there was like that first wave of rumors in homeroom, and then by like last period of the day, the whole truth of the situation came out. It started with like, well, Bobby punched Tommy. And then by the end of the day, you knew the exact whole story, and the last punch thing was like the last 30 seconds of the drama. That feels like the US has come out and said we had a trade deal, and in the meantime, I don't think that's the whole story. Because if we really, really had, you don't think they would have, taken Trump off the golf course to say something? You're sitting on the edge of 145% tariffs. You don't think this is enough to interrupt his nap or his Laura Loomer job? Shit ain't right. I'm literally sitting around waiting for the Chinese government to tell me what's going on. We live in very weird times.
Donald Trump knows very little about being president of the United States, but he knows even less about the judicial branch of the federal government. And that includes knowing anything at all about the very judges that he put in power during his first term in office. Last week, Donald Trump was smacked down by another federal judge that ordered the return of one of the migrants that he shipped off to El Salvador, a 20-year-old named Daniel Lozano Camargo. This was an individual that was in the United States as an official asylum seeker. They did not come here illegally. They came here seeking asylum. They were awaiting their court date to argue their case for asylum, but the Trump administration said, screw it, get out of here, you're going to CCOT in El Salvador. And the judge, Judge Stephanie Gallagher, said, absolutely not, get this man back here, you have denied him his due process. So Donald Trump, in response to this ruling last week, got on Truth Social and said, quote, our court system is not letting me do the job I was elected to do. Activist judges must let the Trump administration deport murderers and other criminals who have come into our country illegally without delay. Again, this was an asylum seeker, so they weren't here illegally. As far as I've seen, they do not have a criminal record. They're sure as hell not a murderer, but they sent this man down to the El Salvadoran prison regardless. But it's because of these damn activist judges, right? Well, what Donald Trump didn't mention is that this judge, Stephanie Gallagher, is not just any kind of activist judge. She's a judge that he appointed during his first term in office. It is a Trump appointee, so I think calling them an activist judge is probably correct. They probably had to go through all kinds of, discussions with Republicans about how right-wing they are. But when it comes to the issue of due process, believe it or not, that used to, 4 months ago, not be a left or right issue. That was just something that both sides of the political, aisles here could agree that, yeah, everybody gets due process. But apparently now, siding with the Constitution makes you an activist and means that, by God, Donald Trump can't do his job. People elected him to do this, and you're not letting him do it. Well, one of the counter arguments to that, of course, is that the judge was appointed by you to do a job, and you're not letting her do her job, right? I mean, did you ever think about the flip side of that, Donnie? Because that's what's happening here. Not to mention the fact that, yeah, you're allowed to do your job. But nowhere in that job description, the oath of office, does it say disregard the Constitution and do whatever the hell you want. That's not part of the job. But that's what you're doing. In fact, to be honest with you, regardless of you saying you don't know if you have to uphold the Constitution, it's literally in the oath of office that you will uphold the Constitution. So you're not doing your job. You're doing the opposite of your job, the opposite of the oath you took to get the job. The judge, however, is doing her job, as are all of the other judges. But it's really starting to get under Donald Trump's skin. Because, according to a report from Bloomberg that came out late last week, Donald Trump has now suffered more than 200 court losses since he was sworn in on January 20th, 2025 at noon Eastern. Over 200 losses. And the guy hasn't even been in office for 115 days. So we're talking about more than one loss every day at this point. Almost 2 losses per day. That is how little regard this administration has for the law. And this is not, for the record, the only Trump-appointed judge that has struck him down. Plenty of the judges that have struck him down have been judges he put on the bench. And yeah, there's been liberal judges. There's also been conservative judges appointed by other conservative presidents. It's kind of an across-the-board thing. Left, right, center, doesn't matter. When you're violating the Constitution, the judge is going to put aside their own political leanings and side with the Constitution because, just like it's supposed to be with you, Donald, it's their job to protect the...
So I got about, I think, 86,000, 87,000, something followers. So I want to give you a scenario. And I want everybody that watches this video to not just like it, not just put a blue heart, but put a statement. I want to hear. I actually read your comments as much as I can. I try to reply. So there's a show in America. I think it's been on maybe 18 seasons now, and the host is John Quinones, very good host, and it's called "What Would You Do?" And he sets up scenarios like in restaurants and public places, and it could be something to do with racism or misogyny or whatever. And he has an actor talk to another person really bad, and he watches the people, the camera watches the people in the room, people that don't say anything, people that get up and say something, all that. And then at the end, he tells them, hey, this was an act to see how you would react. And they ask the people, why did you do what you did? So I want to do that, and I want to use words of Donald Trump, and I want to set it up in a restaurant with nothing but MAGA people. We know they're MAGA. Imagine if somebody walked in and said to somebody sitting down the vile things, and they had their daughter with them. Husband and wife, MAGA. And the daughter's MAGA. So the person walks in and he says to the guy, hey, is that your daughter? He goes, yeah, that's my daughter. Well, perhaps if she wasn't your daughter, I'd have sex with her. Or if they have a baby with them and he says, well, I wonder if your baby daughter is going to have the mother's legs or this, her breasts. What do you think most people would do when they said that? If someone said it to them, I know what I would do. They would be on the floor, minus a bunch of teeth. Yet, MAGA is okay with Donald Trump calling women fat, racist stuff. All kinds. And there, there'll be some MAGA people that are black MAGA people that support him, saying things like what he says. If he walked up to a group of MAGA people and he said to them, black people said, hey, you're my kind of the blacks. Rightfully, they would want to probably kick the shit out of him. But you're okay with Trump saying that. What at your core makes you think that anything he says or does is okay, especially as the sitting president of these United States? If you agree with me, like this video. Again, comment, not just with a blue heart, but with a comment. I want to read your comments. Share it and give me a follow, because I like to follow people back and engage with people that are like-minded, because there's a lot of people out in this country that are fucking dumb-ass idiots.
3,400 kilos of fentanyl since you've been your last 100 days, which saved, are you ready for this, media, 258 million lives.
Again, where are the fucking journalists? And why aren't they calling her out for this bullshit? This is the United States Attorney General looking at the camera and saying, are you ready for this, media? Donald Trump has saved 258 million American lives by getting rid of fentanyl. 258 million. This country has 340 million people in it, roughly. That's 75%. 258 million of 340 million is 75 fucking percent. Like, why is she not being called out by this? Saying something like this should immediately get you removed from office, man. Where is the fucking media?
Letitia James is kind of freaking out. Letitia James is hitting the panic button because Trump is ignoring her demands. Now, this is very interesting. She's been filing motion after motion. He just ignores them because, you know, he's like, I control the purse strings right now and I'm cutting off funding to you guys because you guys aren't playing ball. I mean, this is amazing to me. So Pam Bondi, who, as we began the show with, I told you is not messing around, said, I'm cutting off Letitia's funding. She's not going to have any more money. In fact, all the sanctuary states that are providing shelter and, you know, ease of living, if you would, to illegals, you're not getting anything anymore. I'm just cutting it off. And so Letitia flipped out. She filed one motion and she actually got a temporary order where the judge said, okay, you know, you probably can't pause funding just yet. And Trump ignored it. He absolutely ignored it. And now she's filing a second motion because she has no money. So this is the new one, okay? In response to this continued non-compliance, Attorney General James, alongside her coalition, filed a second motion for enforcement yesterday in the U.S. District Court.
Donald Trump is not the President of the United States. Yes, he was elected to the office and he sits in the White House, but he's not actually running anything. If you look at several of his last interactions with the press, the answer to most questions from Donald is, I don't know. They're occasionally interspersed with, you have to talk to somebody else, like Scott B. over trade, or you need to talk to my lawyers. My lawyers decide how to do that. I got great lawyers. Pam Bondi's a great lawyer. But Donald's not in charge. Donald is an incontinent old man. He's a narcissist who has lost his mental faculties, and he is in dementia. Period. He'd rather be playing golf. He signs documents, and he has no idea what he's signing. So that being said, the question is, who is running the country? Well, I think in one area, the domestic area, the emphasis on immigration, that's pretty obvious. It's Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller, who speaks a lot more than any deputy chief of staff I've ever seen in the past, is the one who's driving the train here, folks. He's the one who came up with separating children from their parents in the last administration. He's the one that wants to empower ICE. Kristi Noem is his little handmaiden. And Miller is the one that's running it. Now, Stephen Miller is basically a little white supremacist racist. There's no question about that. Odd for a Jewish boy, but that's what it is. And this country is going to suffer. We're not going to have a sensible policy of securing our borders, providing immigrants with a path to citizenship and naturalization, a sane, humane method for dealing with people seeking asylum. No, we can't do that because the MAGA crowd wants somebody to beat up on, someone to victimize. And Stephen Miller is more than willing to do that for some reason. So here's the bottom line. We're going to be faced with this. We're going to continue to have it. Trump's not running the show. And on this area, it's Stephen Miller. Now, I think, honestly, a lot of different people are grabbing off their little pieces of power and doing what they can. You know, Pam Bondi's trying to be in charge of justice, and Pete Hegseth, God knows what he's doing over in the military, but each one's trying to divvy it up. But this is Stephen Miller's area. And Stephen, until that particular pustulant carbuncle is cauterized from the ass of the body politic, will be running our internal policies.